Now, total bluff merchant probably wouldn't be the first thing that you would put on your CV, but maybe it should be. Research conducted by the University of Waterloo in Canada found that bluffing convincingly is a sign of intelligence. So is it time to dust off your BS game? Joining me now, Marcus Wood, Managing Director of Fleming Banfoot International, which is a recruitment firm. Good morning, Marcus.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm very well indeed. We're also joined by Dr. Suzanne Doyle-Morris, who is author of The Con Job, Getting Ahead for Competence in a World Obsessed with Confidence, which I guess is roughly where we are. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi there.
Hi. So, Marcus, you're in the recruitment game. Would you say the ability to bluff is actually an asset?
Yeah, very much. Certainly, in most recruitment, it's all about calling people's bluff. Yeah, a little bit.
So, and how do we define bluffing then?
I think sending a message without actually spelling it out, or calling someone's bluff. Yeah, I suppose when you convince somebody of something, when you want to convince them of something, perhaps while making them think of something else.
Well, I mean, it's interesting the way this research was conducted. I think basically the participants were given a false kind of concept, and they had to then sell that to a group of people, and the ones who sold it to the group of people most effectively were then obviously the best bluffers, and they then tracked back and found that they had a high level of intelligence. But basically, in other words, you could call that lying to people, couldn't you?
Yeah, I think in its extreme case, it is lying, and that's when it crosses a line, I suppose. I think it's one thing to imply, for example, that you won't accept a low offer on your house when you're selling it. But it's something else to actually sort of lie about what you would accept. And if you get caught out with that, you lose credibility and go backwards. It's a bit of a game, but you've got to play it right.
Yeah. So, I mean, Suzanne, what's the line between bluffing, which sounds, quite kind of fun and cavalier and devil-may-care, versus licensed lying?
I think it's semantics, frankly. It's really the same thing. So I think that's quite worrying. And I think what's interesting about the research and the headlines it's getting is it makes it sound like these people weren't more intelligent. But what's interesting is when you look at the research, you dig around into the journal article, it was more that they were perceived to be intelligent. They weren't rated and measured by any external tests to see that they were more intelligent. They were just rated by other people as being pretty good at a game of essentially academic balderdash, where you just made it up as you went along. And that I think has some really worrying ramifications.
Well, without getting myself into terrible trouble, I don't think I'm being too controversial. When one looks at politicians around the world, let's not come too close to home, it would appear that the more successful politicians have refined that art, Suzanne.
I would agree wholly. And in my book, I do talk about politicians, actually. But what's so funny is when you read the journal article, they themselves call out all the forms, the areas that they say are particularly useful for this are areas that value subjective evaluations of others. That is art, advertising, politics, coaching, journalism, and the humanities. So it's quite a wide berth of groups. But I think what's interesting is the worrying story that I take from this is I don't want people who are kind of mediocre to think, well, it looks like I could just get along away with lying, because actually what the research also showed was that being good at lying was certainly correlated to being perceived to be more intelligent, but those people were less likely to actually do it. And I think that's an interesting dichotomy. And really that's about the fact that they kind of knew their audience. They knew that they had self-awareness, and they kind of understood that they might go detected, which meant that they were less likely to actually use those skills, if you will, those evil superpowers, we'll call them.
The other thing that occurs to me, Marcus, is whether or not the better bluffers are, and I'm getting into fairly kind of stereotypical territory here, maybe more likely to be men than women, maybe more likely to be older or more middle-aged people as opposed to young people, maybe likely to be people who had grown up in a more affluent situation than people who hadn't. Is that true, do you think?
No, in fact, on one of those, I would challenge you completely. I think women make much better job of bluffing than most men.
Controversial.
If I had to be sexist about
That's convenient for you, isn't it?
They win that game hands down. But no, I think bluffing. I think the whole point about bluffing is there's an element of humour to it. It is a bit of a game. I think once you go over to deception, you're talking about something else. Bluffing is about making the other person believe your position, and in business that is essential. So the ability to be able to say, that is my final offer, I will walk away from this table if we can't agree these terms today. That is a typical business conversation, and we all have them in our private lives as well. And I think there's a very amusing film out there where he's not allowed to lie and his life goes horribly wrong. I think you do need to be able to do that.
Oh, yes, Jim Carrey, of course. What's that called? Something about liar, liar. Is it something like that? Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, but Suzanne, I'm leaving that with you. Women are the better bluffers than men. Just a quick one. Yes, no, do you think?
No way. I think that...
No, that's it. Thank you.
On digital radio,
FM,
your smart speaker,
and BBC Sounds.
BBC Radio Scotland.